Back with you on the Newsfeed PM. Thanks for staying on. Oxfam, with other partners, have started distributing food aid to flood victims in Mthatha in the Eastern Cape. Over 100 people died and dozens of families were displaced following torrential rains in the province in June. Joining us now is Nkateko Chauke, Interim Executive Director at Oxfam. Nkateko, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. Why did Oxfam decide to join this particular initiative?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Thabo. Oxfam partnered with Action Aid South Africa and City Hope, essentially to launch our phase 2 of our response. Now, particularly our response here is not only about responding to affected victims, but it's really to facilitate a joint intervention that looks at meaningful support and long-term support for recovery. And some of the key processes that we took to undertake this work included undertaking a needs assessment, so ensuring that our teams visited prior to the deployment of the response to engage communities in temporary shelters and understand the needs themselves in terms of what are the critical issues that are required by households. And what we found there was essentially survey that we conducted, wherein 4,780 individuals who were affected by the climate-induced hazard, as well as 1,300 households were affected. So we're crafting our response to really reach school-going children as well, to facilitate reintegration into school by providing food packs. We're also responding to babies, reaching at least 200 babies with the provision of food packs for nutrition, as well as centralizing our approach in terms of care. So really anchoring psychosocial support as a key intervention, informed by data collection, but also providing a dedicated care approach that seeks to also address the trauma aspects of it. And lastly, the recovery and distribution. And we're anchoring this response today here in Mthatha, commemorating Women's Day, but also recognizing that we really need to come together in fostering these interventions.
Yeah. Now, Oxfam, of course, known as a global movement that is working together to fight inequality and poverty and injustice. Looking at the situation, particularly in the Eastern Cape, Mthatha in particular, quite flood prone. It's not the first flood incident that we are seeing there. In terms of your campaigning, what are the more sustainable interventions that you believe the country needs to be focusing on for a fairer, I suppose, an equitable distribution of resources to the people of Mthatha?
One of the things we need to really have a deep conversation about as a nation is looking at the landscape of the humanitarian response infrastructure in the country. And there's a need for us to deepen our approach in terms of how we are ensuring that we work towards putting in place systems that are allowing us to strengthen our preparedness capacity for humanitarian response, but also ensuring that we're building anticipatory response action and capacity as well. And so Oxfam South Africa is being intentional about bringing in other actors in the space who are responding, but also facilitating a national dialogue about how could we begin to deal with issues around leadership and coordination in the infrastructure or architecture of a humanitarian response in South Africa, but also how do we tap into global entities such as ourselves and others to really create or establish an ecosystem that is mutually reinforcing, that not only works to respond, but also creates and contributes to an infrastructure or ecosystem that is really prepared, informed by policy, and addressing these key gaps. Being in the field and seeing that also the way and promises in which the state has communicated the intention of erecting 400 shelters, but now realizing that only 20 structures have been put up. is also something that is really compromising our communities, but also escalating the dire conditions that we're seeing in the field today. So that dedicated response, coordination, deepening our understanding of the humanitarian response architecture in South Africa, and coordinating amongst APEX responders in country would help with addressing policy issues, but also building that capacity for preparedness.
Yeah. Now, when you look at that, I mean, the incident happened in June. We are now in August, so about two months or so that would have passed, and the state promising 400 units, but only being able to deliver 20 at this time. What does the state say is the hindrance towards that particular delivery? Is that conversation being had?
We are calling for clear and transparent communication, Thabo. While we have seen the statement that came from the state in terms of the massive losses experienced based on infrastructure, the heavy costs that are required to really fix that, we equally wanting to understand a detailed, comprehensive plan that not only looks at infrastructural repair, but also looks at communities themselves. There are two conversations that need to happen. One at policy level in terms of unlocking much needed finance, particularly to cover loss and damage, which is what the state needs to respond to, but also a conversation about how we build systems and put processes in place that foster care, social protection, facilitate gender trainings, pull communities out of destitution, locate them in shelters where they can actually have the value and benefit of the state's protection. So in essence, our call to action, Thabo, is to get transparent communication from the state. We are aware now with our teams on the ground that members and affected communities have been removed from lodges that the state had actually organized before and are now placed in town halls without any support. And so that for me is a violation of and how are we being much more intentional about entrenching dignity in the response that we see with communities. So as we are here with our partners, those are the key aspects that we are responding to. We're not only responding and providing non-food items and food supplies, we are also matching our response with gender-based violence training and psychosocial support as well, given the high levels of trauma experienced by communities as we see it on the ground.
Right, Nkateko, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Nkateko Chauke, Interim Executive Director at Oxfam, their intervention in Mthatha, particularly for those flood victims. Now,